Imagine walking through history's shadows where every secret, betrayal, and twisted mind hides behind the pages of time. Murderers who smiled in daylight, betrayals that shattered empires, and madness that consumed the brightest minds. All of it, lurking just beneath the surface. Tonight we'll unravel stories too dark for daylight, secrets so chilling they still haunt the corridors of history. You'll meet those who crossed the line between genius and insanity, and those who fell prey to deception, fear, and cruelty. Prepare yourself, because once you start, there's no turning back. Are you ready to step into history's darkest corners? If you dare to explore these secrets, hit that subscribe button now. Comment below which historical mystery terrifies you the most. Your answer might be featured in our next episode. Don't forget to like this video if you crave the truth behind madness and betrayal. Turn on notifications so you never miss a shocking story from history's shadows. In the heart of 16th century Hungary, a towering castle overlooked the misty Carpathian hills. Its owner, Elizabeth Bathory, was a countess of unimaginable wealth and noble blood. She was a woman of rare beauty, sharp intellect, and influence that could bend men to her will. On the surface, she seemed the embodiment of elegance, graceful in her gowns, precise in etiquette, and an ardent patron of the arts. Yet behind the stone walls of her castle lurked whispers, stories no one dared speak aloud. Servants vanished without warning. Young girls disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Locals whispered, "She is beautiful, but beware the countess's gaze." Many dismissed the rumors, attributing the vanishings to disease, misadventure, or accidents of the road, but the pattern was undeniable. Every missing girl had been near the countess shortly before vanishing. Elizabeth's obsession was her beauty and youth. As her face betrayed the faintest signs of aging, her vanity mutated into something monstrous. Herbs, potions, and secret treatments failed to preserve her youth, fueling her growing desperation. Historians would later argue whether this obsession birthed madness or cruelty, or if it was a combination of both. The castle's corridors, dark and echoing, became stages for whispers of terror. Servants spoke of secret chambers where strange rituals allegedly occurred. Nobles visiting her estate noted her oddities, strange noises, sudden outbursts, and an almost manic obsession with the appearance of her hands and face. While no proof existed, the rumors were persistent, haunting those who dared speak of them. Then the disappearances began in earnest. One by one, young girls vanished. At first, townsfolk clung to hope. They would return, lost but alive. Then more girls disappeared. Fear and superstition began to dominate local conversation. Some swore they saw strange shapes moving in the castle windows at night. Others claimed to hear shrieks piercing the snow-laden silence of winter nights. One 14-year-old servant, trembling and pale, begged to leave. She claimed she had seen horrors no child should witness. Young girls chained in cold rooms, fainting, beaten, or worse. She spoke of strange marks and rituals, her voice faltering with terror. Her elders dismissed her words as childish imagination, but in hushed tones, fear spread like wildfire through the village. Elizabeth's behavior escalated. Her obsession now bordered on ritualistic mania. Some witnesses described seeing her with wounds on her arms, oddly placed scratches, as if she were testing something on herself. Her courtly peers began to avoid her. Invitations to events dwindled. Letters became terse and cold. Yet her wealth insulated her from scrutiny. By the early 1600s, reports reached the royal court. Rumors spoke of blood being collected, spilled, and perhaps poured over her body. Many historians believe she bathed in the blood of young girls, convinced it preserved her youth. Others argue the scale was exaggerated by political rivals. But the locals' fear was undeniable. In the villages surrounding Countess castle, no one spoke openly of the countess for fear of retaliation. Even servants who survived described nights filled with terror. Guards who were loyal to her family reported strange processions within the castle walls. Strange symbols appeared on floors and walls. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways. Some girls were found days later, frightened, emaciated, and covered in bruises, though others were never found at all. Elizabeth's growing madness began consuming her social circle. She distrusted anyone who questioned her, often turning subtle punishments into cruel public spectacles. Yet despite the rumors, the full scale of her deeds remained hidden. Letters were intercepted, and those who dared to investigate her directly were often too intimidated, or disappeared. Questions persisted among those brave enough to ask. What truly happened inside her castle? How many girls had suffered at her hands, and how far would she go to protect her secret and her youth? As winter turned to spring, a new horror emerged. A young servant, desperate to survive, attempted to flee the castle. She was caught near the riverbank and dragged back. Her account of what she had seen terrified even the most skeptical. Secret chambers, blood-stained walls, and ritualistic behavior the likes of which no one could comprehend. Yet she survived, barely. Her testimony would later play a role in bringing Elizabeth to justice, but only after years of fear and concealment. Despite her increasingly erratic behavior, Elizabeth's wealth and power shielded her. It wasn't until a conspiracy of nobles, relatives, and local authorities realized the danger she posed that formal action was taken. Arrests, investigations, and interrogations began. Survivors were found and forced to recount horrors that even seasoned officials found difficult to hear. The royal investigation revealed what had long been whispered. Elizabeth's obsession had spiraled into madness, cruelty, and murder. Reports claimed she had tortured and killed hundreds of girls, using them in rituals to preserve her beauty. The sheer scale staggered investigators. Chambers of horrors were documented with shackles, instruments, and evidence of prolonged suffering. Yet the Countess was not executed. Nobility and superstition complicated the process. Instead, Elizabeth was confined to her castle, walled into a room with only a small window, left to die quietly. Villagers outside whispered that her screams could still be heard in the night, echoing off the Carpathian hills. Her story became legend, a cautionary tale of vanity, obsession, and the deadly consequences of unrestrained power. Even centuries later, historians debate the details. Was Elizabeth a sadistic killer, or was she the victim of a political smear? Did she truly bathe in blood, or is that a myth amplified over time? Whatever the truth, the terror she inspired, and the unanswered questions, remain. Who were the girls that disappeared without a trace, and could any secrets about them still lie hidden? Did Elizabeth act alone, or were there accomplices who helped conceal her crimes? Could someone have stopped her sooner, or was she always destined to fall into madness? And finally, what dark rituals remained undiscovered, hiding in the shadows of Countess Castle, waiting to be revealed? The story is far from over. As the castle doors close behind the Countess, history still whispers her name, reminding us that some secrets are never truly buried, and some darkness can never be fully contained. If you want to uncover the chilling truths hidden in history, hit subscribe now. Comment below. Which moment in Elizabeth Bathory's story horrifies you the most? Your thoughts could be featured in the next episode. Like this video if you crave the truth behind murder, madness, and betrayal. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story from history's darkest corners. The castle walls that once concealed Elizabeth Bathory's horrors could no longer protect her. Whispers of missing girls had spread beyond the villages, reaching the ears of nobles and officials who could no longer ignore the rumors. By now, Elizabeth's obsession with eternal youth had become infamous, a tale that traveled faster than the speed of gossip. Yet even then, no one dared confront her openly. Fear and wealth gave her armor. But rumors have a way of catching fire. A group of determined nobles, motivated by suspicion, greed, and concern for the safety of local girls, began their investigations. They were cautious, knowing that one misstep could cost them their lives. Disguised as traders, servants, or distant relatives, they entered the castle under various pretexts, observing the Countess's habits and the strange routines of her household. At first, they found little concrete evidence. Elizabeth maintained appearances flawlessly. She entertained visitors with charm, grace, and an almost unnerving poise. Yet hidden behind her eyes was something darker, an intuition that she was being watched. Subtle gestures, small changes in routine, and secretive whispers among her servants hinted that the Countess sensed the investigation was closing in. Then, evidence began to surface. Witnesses from the village came forward, recounting stories of young girls who had vanished. Some survived the Countess's cruelty long enough to tell officials of chained rooms, bruises, and blood-stained floors. Their testimonies painted a horrifying picture of torture, ritualistic obsession, and a mind consumed by vanity and madness. The Countess, aware that rumors had reached the court, became erratic. She punished servants suspected of talking, sometimes in public, sometimes in the shadows. Her cruelty escalated. Fear became both a weapon and a shield. But the investigators were patient, carefully documenting every story, every trace of blood, every witness statement. Finally, in 1610, the royal court could no longer ignore the evidence. Investigators, armed with testimonies and preliminary reports, arrived at Countess Castle. They found doors hidden behind tapestries, rooms that reeked of decay, and chambers that spoke of unspeakable cruelty. Even hardened officials recoiled at what they saw. Remnants of tortured victims, instruments of pain, and signs of rituals meant to preserve youth in the most grotesque ways imaginable. Elizabeth was arrested, but her noble blood complicated the process. Execution was forbidden for someone of her status. Instead, she was placed under house arrest within her castle. Some of her closest accomplices were punished severely, while others vanished, leaving gaps in the story that historians would debate for centuries. Inside the castle, Elizabeth's world shrank to the size of her room. Walled in, with only a narrow window, she lived her final years isolated from the world. Yet her obsession never fully dissipated. Servants reported hearing strange noises at night, screams, whisperings, even the sound of water being poured, though no one could see the source. Was she still performing rituals in secret, or was it the echo of a mind unraveling? The trial and investigation revealed shocking details. Hundreds of girls may have suffered at her hands, though exact numbers remain unknown. Some historians suggest exaggeration by her rivals, while others insist the evidence is chillingly credible. Political motives, jealousy, and superstition likely shaped the narrative. But even with potential embellishments, the horror of her actions could not be denied. Elizabeth's story became a legend of terror, vanity, and unchecked power. Villagers spoke of the Blood Countess with fear and reverence, warning each generation about the consequences of obsession and cruelty. Even centuries later, tourists and historians are drawn to the ruins of Countess Castle, searching for echoes of screams, whispers of rituals, and traces of a mind consumed by madness. The aftermath left questions no historian could fully answer. How many victims were never documented, their fates forever lost to time? Did Elizabeth act alone, or were others complicit in her dark experiments? Were the rituals truly supernatural in intent, or merely twisted by her obsession with youth? Could someone have stopped her sooner? Or was her wealth and status enough to shield her from scrutiny for years? Even in isolation, Elizabeth Bathory's influence lingered. The tales of her cruelty inspired fear and fascination in equal measure, shaping European folklore and the dark imagination of later generations. Her name became synonymous with terror, vanity, and the extremes of human obsession. And yet, for all the horror she inflicted, the mystery remains. What truly motivated her? Was it vanity, madness, sadistic pleasure, or a combination of all three? Even after centuries, historians still debate the psychology of the Blood Countess, unable to reconcile the elegance of her nobility with the grotesque act she committed. Are there undiscovered victims of Elizabeth Bathory still hidden within the ruins of her castle? Did any accomplices escape justice, continuing her dark legacy in secret? Could the obsession with eternal youth have deeper symbolic or ritualistic meaning that is yet to be uncovered? What lessons does her story hold for understanding the darkness that can exist behind wealth, power, and beauty? The tale of Elizabeth Bathory reminds us that history is not just a series of dates and events. It is a living record of human obsession, cruelty, and the shadows that lurk behind even the most magnificent facades. And as long as her story is remembered, the echoes of her madness will continue to haunt the corridors of history. If you're fascinated by history's darkest secrets, hit subscribe now. Comment below. Which part of Elizabeth Bathory's story chills you the most and why? Your thoughts could appear in the next episode. Like this video if you want more shocking tales of murder, madness, and betrayal. Turn on notifications so you never miss a journey into history's shadows. Even after Elizabeth Bathory's death in 1614, the shadows she cast refused to fade. Her story traveled through Europe, whispered in hushed tones among villagers and nobles alike. People spoke of her as a cautionary tale, warning that obsession, vanity, and cruelty can corrupt even the highest ranks of nobility. But her legend grew, morphing with every retelling, sometimes horrifyingly accurate, sometimes exaggerated. Historians today still debate the extent of her crimes. Contemporary accounts suggest hundreds of young girls may have suffered at her hands, though exact numbers remain impossible to verify. Some scholars argue that political rivals, eager to claim her lands and influence, exaggerated the horrors. Others point to corroborated testimonies from survivors who describe torture, ritualistic abuse, and imprisonment. Regardless of the debate, one thing is clear. Her actions left an indelible mark on history. Elizabeth's psychological profile continues to fascinate experts. Modern psychologists argue she may have displayed traits consistent with psychopathy, a lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and cold calculation. Others see a pattern of obsessive-compulsive delusion, a desperate need to control life and death itself in pursuit of youth. Perhaps it was a combination, a mind so consumed by fear of aging that it justified any atrocity. What drives a human being to such extremes? Could it be madness, ritualistic belief, or sheer sadism? Survivor testimonies give chilling insight into her methods. Girls described being chained in stone rooms, deprived of food or warmth, and subjected to strange rituals that involve symbolic bloodletting. Some claim she bathed in blood, hoping it would preserve her youthful complexion. While skeptics argue this is legend, multiple sources describe her fascination with the color, texture, and ritual of blood. The psychological implications are staggering, an obsession so intense it defies empathy or reason. Elizabeth's trial documents, though fragmented, provide further clues. She reportedly remained composed during questioning, confident in her noble immunity. Some documents describe her denying accusations, claiming innocence, or even mocking investigators. Yet the evidence, rooms filled with instruments of torture, letters detailing her instructions to servants, and the accounts of terrified witnesses, overwhelmed her defenses. Even centuries later, reading these documents evokes horror. The influence of her story extends beyond her lifetime. Bathory's legend shaped folklore, inspiring myths of vampires and immortal beings who feed on the young to preserve their beauty. In many ways, she became the archetype of the bloodthirsty noblewoman, a cultural reflection of human fascination with vanity, power, and evil. Some historians argue that her tale resonates today because it taps into a universal fear, the corruption of power unchecked by morality or empathy. Even the physical remnants of her life fuel curiosity. Archaeologists and historians occasionally uncover artifacts from her castle, personal items, letters, and architectural traces hinting at her complex life. Rooms hidden behind tapestries, secret stairways, and mysterious locked chambers suggest that much of her world remains unexplored. Could there still be undiscovered victims or evidence hidden within those walls? Every new artifact prompts more questions than answers. Bathory's story also invites reflection on her social environment. As a woman of immense wealth and influence, she was shielded by both her nobility and the societal norms that protected the elite. This imbalance allowed her obsessions to flourish unchecked. Scholars argue that understanding her crimes requires examining not just her psychology, but the society that enabled her, a world where power, fear, and privilege could mask unimaginable cruelty. The fascination with Bathory is compounded by the surreal contradictions of her life. She was both a patron of the arts and a perpetrator of horrors. She attended lavish parties while orchestrating torture in hidden chambers. She cultivated relationships with the royal court while secretly maintaining an empire of terror within her castle walls. These contrasts make her story endlessly compelling and horrifying, a psychological puzzle centuries in the making. Even in isolation after being confined to her castle, Elizabeth's behavior continued to raise questions. Witnesses described hearing strange sounds at night, shrieks, the movement of heavy objects, and water pouring as though she were continuing her rituals in secret. Was this madness manifesting in isolation, or did she maintain some method to her obsession despite her confinement? Historians can only speculate. The tale of Elizabeth Bathory also raises profound ethical and philosophical questions. Was she driven solely by vanity and obsession? Or was there a ritualistic or symbolic element we fail to comprehend today? Could her actions be explained by cultural or religious beliefs of her era? Or do they represent an individual descent into pure sadistic cruelty? And, perhaps most chillingly, could anyone else have acted in similar ways if given similar power and protection? Even today, the ruins of Countess Castle attract those drawn to the macabre. Ghost hunters, historians, and tourists alike report strange occurrences. Cold drafts in sealed rooms, faint echoes of screams, and an oppressive atmosphere that feels almost alive. Whether these experiences are psychological or paranormal, they reinforce the sense that Elizabeth's influence persists long after her death. Her legend has permeated popular culture, inspiring countless novels, films, and documentaries. In each adaptation, certain truths are amplified, others minimized, but the central themes remain: obsession, cruelty, vanity, and power. These retellings keep her story alive, demonstrating humanity's enduring fascination with the extremes of behavior and the consequences of unchecked desire. Could there still be hidden evidence or victims within the ruins of Countess Castle? Were her accomplices complicit in her crimes, and did some escape justice? What deeper psychological or ritualistic purpose lay behind her obsession with blood and youth? Does Elizabeth Bathory's story hold lessons for today about power, privilege, and moral corruption? Elizabeth Bathory's legacy reminds us that history is not merely dates and events. It is the intersection of human psychology, societal structure, and morality. Her life and actions serve as both warning and fascination, a window into the darkness that can emerge when obsession, madness, and privilege collide. Her story continues to haunt, inspire, and provoke questions centuries later, ensuring that the Blood Countess will never be forgotten. If you're intrigued by the darkest secrets of history, hit subscribe now. Comment below. What do you think motivated Elizabeth Bathory? Madness, vanity, or something far darker? Your insights might be featured in the next episode. Like this video if you want more shocking tales of murder, madness, and betrayal. Turn on notifications so you never miss history's chilling truths. Centuries after Elizabeth Bathory's death, her legend refuses to fade. Historians, archaeologists, and psychologists continue to debate her life, her crimes, and the mysteries that remain buried within the walls of Countess Castle. The fascination is universal, a woman of extreme wealth and power whose obsession with youth led her down a path of cruelty so extreme it still shocks the imagination. Modern investigators have attempted to peel back the layers of myth and fact. Archaeological studies of Countess Castle reveal evidence consistent with the historical accounts: hidden chambers, staircases leading to nowhere, and remnants of what might have been used as confinement rooms. Although centuries of decay and looting obscure the full picture, these discoveries suggest that some truths may have been lost forever, hidden within the stone and shadows. Psychologists today continue to analyze her case. Was Elizabeth Bathory a psychopath, a narcissist, or a woman driven to obsession by fear of aging? Some argue her behavior aligns with traits of antisocial personality disorder, characterized by lack of empathy, manipulation, and extreme cruelty. Others suggest that cultural factors, her status, societal expectations, and the isolation of nobility, fueled a psychological downward spiral. The combination of power, privilege, and obsession remains a compelling framework for understanding her behavior. The myths surrounding her have become nearly inseparable from the historical record. Tales of her bathing in blood inspired vampire lore and horror fiction for centuries. Novels, films, and television series often portray her as a supernatural figure, amplifying her cruelty and creating an almost mythical persona. Yet even when stripped of legend, her documented actions remain horrifying. Torture, imprisonment, and murder of innocent victims under the guise of ritual and vanity Local folklore continues to keep her memory alive. Villagers speak of shadowy figures in the castle ruins and cold drafts in sealed rooms. Paranormal enthusiasts claim to hear screams and whisperings echoing through the halls. While these stories cannot be verified scientifically, they underscore how her story has permeated human imagination. Some argue these tales are cultural memory, fear, and trauma encoded in story, passed down over centuries. Despite centuries passing, unanswered questions persist. How many victims were never documented? Could accomplices have assisted in concealing the crimes, escaping history's judgment? Were some acts exaggerated by rivals seeking to destroy her legacy? Or do they reflect the full unspeakable truth? Every answer seems to give rise to another question, creating a labyrinth of mystery surrounding her life and death. Modern forensic techniques, had they been available in her time, might have revealed more about the scale and method of her crimes. Blood analysis, DNA testing, and archaeological stratigraphy could have confirmed her victims and clarified aspects lost to time. Yet these limitations contribute to her mystique. What remains hidden fuels curiosity, speculation, and fear. Elizabeth's story also offers lessons in human psychology. How does obsession distort morality? At what point does fear of mortality justify cruelty in the mind of the obsessed? Her case is studied not just as historical tragedy, but as a warning of what can happen when power, privilege, and vanity combine with unchecked obsession. Even her death leaves mysteries. While she was confined in Countess Castle until her demise, witnesses reported strange noises, whispers, and possible continuation of rituals behind sealed walls. Did she maintain her obsession in isolation? Or was it the echoes of her tortured mind that haunted the castle? Historians may never know. Her influence in popular culture continues to evolve. From vampire stories to documentaries, Elizabeth Bathory is a symbol of vanity, cruelty, and obsession. Writers explore her psyche, questioning whether she acted alone, whether accomplices existed, or whether cultural and political forces shaped her actions. In some versions, she is a purely evil figure. In others, a tragic product of societal pressure and isolation. Both interpretations captivate audiences, illustrating the enduring fascination with her life. Could undiscovered victims remain hidden in parts of Countess Castle never explored? Were her rituals symbolic, or purely obsessive acts of cruelty? Did accomplices actively participate, and what became of them? And how much of her story has been lost, exaggerated, or transformed into myth over the centuries? The echoes of Elizabeth Bathory reach beyond Hungary. Her story inspires reflection on ethics, human psychology, and historical narrative. It challenges us to question how societies treat power, wealth, and those who wield it without restraint. Her crimes are not just historical. They are timeless reminders of the consequences of obsession, cruelty, and unchecked privilege. The fascination with her life remains intense. Tourists and historians continue to explore the ruins, hoping to uncover physical evidence of her actions. Paranormal investigators attempt to capture the echoes of the past. Writers, filmmakers, and scholars reinterpret her story, adding layers of speculation, analysis, and horror. The Blood Countess, centuries dead, continues to influence culture, literature, and psychological study. Could modern investigation reveal new truths about her crimes? Are there still undiscovered victims buried in the castle ruins? Did her obsession inspire others to emulate her, either in reality or legend? And finally, can humanity ever truly understand the mind of someone like Elizabeth Bathory, or will she remain a permanent enigma? Elizabeth Bathory's legacy is a reminder that history's darkest secrets are rarely fully revealed. The combination of power, obsession, cruelty, and myth ensures her story will haunt future generations. As we approach the conclusion of her tale in the next episode, the unanswered questions, unsolved mysteries, and echoes of madness will challenge everything we think we know about the Blood Countess. If you followed Elizabeth Bathory's dark journey, hit subscribe now. Comment below. What's the most chilling part of her story, and could her obsession ever happen today? Like this video if you want more deep dives into history's horrifying secrets. Turn on notifications to never miss the final revelations of murder, madness, and betrayal. Even centuries after her death, Elizabeth Bathory's presence feels alive in whispers, ruins, and legend. The castle she once ruled stands as a silent witness to her obsession, her cruelty, and the horror that human ambition and vanity can unleash. But what truly remains after centuries of myths, exaggerations, and half-truths? The answer is both haunting and elusive. As historians continue to debate the numbers, the methods, and the psychology behind her actions, one question persists above all others. Were her crimes solely the product of madness, or was there a calculated intent to wield terror as a tool of power? Evidence from trial documents, survivor testimonies, and surviving artifacts suggests a mix of both. The obsessive attention to ritualistic detail indicates more than mere impulsive cruelty. There was a deliberate orchestration behind the horror. Some scholars have proposed unsettling theories that Elizabeth's obsession with youth was symbolic, a manifestation of fear of mortality magnified by privilege and isolation. Could her actions have been influenced by superstitions of the era, or was it a personal descent into the most extreme form of vanity? Imagine standing in her castle, wandering those shadowed halls, wondering if each locked door concealed another victim. How many secrets still linger just out of sight? Even the ruins of Countess castle suggest unfinished stories. Archaeologists have uncovered hidden chambers, remnants of personal items, and what may have been implements for confinement and torture. But centuries of decay and looting leave gaps, questions that may never be answered. Could some victims remain hidden, waiting to tell their story centuries later? The cultural impact of Bathory's story remains profound. Vampire myths, novels, and horror films drew inspiration from her obsession with blood. But there's a psychological truth buried beneath the legend. The fascination with immortality and control, and the terrifying extremes people can reach when these desires overpower morality. What drives humans to cross that line between obsession and atrocity? Modern researchers continue to speculate. Was Elizabeth acting alone? Or were there accomplices within her household, quietly enabling her horrors? Documents suggest some servants may have participated, willingly or under duress. Could history still hide their identities? And if so, how many secrets are buried in those stone walls forever beyond reach? The Blood Countess also teaches a lesson in societal complicity. Her power, wealth, and noble status shielded her from scrutiny for decades. Could such a concentration of unchecked authority allow similar horrors today? As we examine her story, one cannot help but reflect. How does society enable the unchecked excesses of those in power? Even after she was walled in for life, whispers of her obsession persisted. Witnesses described strange noises, shrieks, whispers, and the sounds of water, echoing from her chambers. Did her madness continue to manifest in isolation, or are these tales simply echoes of a legend too terrifying to forget? Could the mind, under extreme obsession, continue to haunt even the living after death? The final legacy of Elizabeth Bathory is not just horror, it is reflection. Her story forces us to confront the darkness in human nature, the dangers of privilege, and the fragile boundary between genius, obsession, and evil. It challenges historians, psychologists, and audiences to question, are monsters born or created by circumstances, culture, and opportunity? Even today, tourists report eerie experiences in the ruins of Countess Castle. Sudden chills, unexplained sounds, and a pervasive sense of being watched. Whether paranormal or psychological, the effect is undeniable. Her story continues to captivate the imagination, blending history, horror, and myth. Are these remnants of her obsession, or merely the power of story itself? As we close the final chapter of Elizabeth Bathory, the unanswered questions remain. Could undiscovered victims or evidence still exist? Did accomplices fully escape justice? Was her obsession purely vanity, or did ritualistic and symbolic motives drive her? How much of her legend is exaggeration, and how much is unflinching reality? And most chilling of all, could someone like her exist again, in any era, under similar circumstances? The Blood Countess reminds us that history's darkest secrets are rarely fully revealed. Obsession, Power and cruelty leave traces that endure far beyond death. As we walk through the corridors of history, Elizabeth Bathory's story is a warning. Even beauty, wealth, and nobility can harbor unimaginable darkness. And her echoes, forever entwined with myth and reality, ensure that the fascination, fear, and questions she inspires will never die. Cliffhanger for reflection. Even as we conclude this series, her story leaves us with one final question. Are we safe merely because centuries have passed? Or do the shadows of human obsession always linger, waiting to resurface in new forms?